We begin with live images from Philadelphia, where the two candidates for president just held a tense, high-stakes showdown. Tonight, millions tuned in for this first-ever face-off between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Did either do enough to change the race for the White House? That is what our team is here to help you figure out. Pat Kessler is back with his reality check.
First, political reporter Esme Murphy is here with the highlights and some instant analysis. Esme?
Well, Frank and Amelia, believe it or not, these two candidates had never met before tonight. Vice President Harris walked across the stage to introduce herself before the debate began. The two shook hands, but then the gloves came off.
It wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me.
And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression.
Her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me.
Nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing.
Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department.
But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
I'm joined by Democratic analyst Abu Amara and Republican Amy Koch. Let's start with the Democratic perspective. Abu, polls showed that as many as a third of voters did not know much about Kamala Harris. Did she do enough to change that?
I think there's no question she did. I think it's hard in politics to have high expectations and to meet those expectations. I think she delivered a strong performance tonight. And when you contrast that with Donald Trump, who seemed stumbling and bumbling, I think she seemed much more presidential.
Well, Amy, let me ask you about that. The big question for Donald Trump, could he stay on message? Did he stay on message? And did he do enough to appeal to independents and women, groups that he is trailing badly with?
So I think that both of them had a mixed bag tonight. I don't think that Kamala Harris necessarily landed the final blows, and neither did the president. The former president was more disciplined in this debate than I've ever seen him, and he was more on message. He missed a couple opportunities around immigration, but he absolutely landed when it came to economy, when it came to foreign policy, and you know, I think the vice president landed a few in areas that you would expect when we're talking about healthcare issues, when you're talking about reproductive health. I think those were her strongest moments, and so I think that both of them had sort of it might be kind of a wash. I think they both needed voters they needed to pick up. I'm not sure that either of them accomplished that tonight.
All right. Well, thank you so much, both of you, with Abu Amara and Amy Koch. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO News.
All right, thanks, gang. We want to welcome back Pat Kessler now. Pat is back with something we all know very well, reality checks. Good to see you.
Boy, there's a lot of reality to check tonight, too. There's a lot to unpack here. The two candidates sparred on issues from COVID-19 to January 6th. We saw that in Esme's report. Even those unfounded claims you heard about immigrants eating their neighbors' pets. Not making this up. But let us start with one of the key concerns for the voters, a reality check on the economy.
I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy.
Things are bad for a lot of people, of course, but that's misleading. It needs some context. Grocery prices do remain about 20% higher than they were 4 years ago, and inflation did top 9% under the Biden administration. No question, it was tough. That number, though, was the highest monthly figure in about 40 years, but it's not the highest ever. The 1970s and 80s, many of us remember, inflation rates were between 12 and 14%. The latest numbers for July show inflation has since cooled to less than 3%. Also tonight, abortion rights, especially because of the Trump-appointed Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and a wildly inaccurate claim about Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minnesota's abortion law.
Her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me.
Well, that is unequivocally false. Governor Walz has not said that execution of a baby after birth is okay. In fact, that is illegal in all 50 states, including Minnesota. The vast majority of abortions are done in the first 3 months of pregnancy, and an abortion in the 9th month is extremely rare and virtually always in the cases of severe medical conditions. Now, both candidates took tough questions about where they stand on a number of issues. Vice President Harris about her changing positions, including fracking, a key oil exploration job creator in Pennsylvania.
I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
Well, she did not make that very clear over the years. That's misleading. Harris says her values haven't changed on fracking, but when she was a political candidate in California and running for president in 2020, Harris supported a ban on all fracking. Now she says she does not support a ban. There are so many more claims to check for you about the Minneapolis riots, whether Trump accepts the results of the last election. And again, that conspiracy theory about immigrants eating pets. I cannot believe I'm actually saying this out loud. We're going to have a bunch of reality checks starting tomorrow, coming up on the news at 4 and at 6. And you can expect to see a lot more of this. And there's going to be a lot to check over the next couple of months.
Well, we are happy you're back to do it.
Me too. Thank you.
Yes,
Good.
Thank you. Well, both VP candidates responded tonight to the debate, and here's what they said about abortion.
The president's been very clear that he doesn't want a national abortion ban. I think in some ways he finds the question a little bit ridiculous, because why are we asking him about legislation that's never going to actually happen, and why he would veto it or not veto it when he says very explicitly that he doesn't support a national abortion ban and he wants these policies to be made by the states.
Everything Donald Trump said, that is untrue. The clarity of this is Roe. When you have Roe, you have the protections in place where women make their own decisions with their health care providers, not Donald Trump.
The debate between Senator Vance and Governor Walz is coming up on October 1st, right here on WCCO. Election Day is just 55 days away. You can count on us to bring you the latest campaign updates on TV and in our stream, CBS News Minnesota.